When you become a pioneer, you forfeit popularity. You can't pick your calling and pick being a part of the crowd. You have to choose one or the other. And happy Sunday, by the way, for everyone who's going to tune into this video. Happy Sunday, you guys. But there's a scripture that is coming to my mind as I sit with that point, that either you're going to choose your calling or you're going to choose the acceptance of the crowd. And that scripture is Galatians 1:10. And to paraphrase, that scripture talks about how if I'm a servant of Christ, I have to forfeit the approval of people. Because if I still was yearning for the approval of man, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ. And I was thinking, because I recently saw a video where a young woman was breaking down, rightfully so, because she had started a business venture for herself. And as a byproduct, she was dealing with a lot of people popping up from her past, discrediting her business. And also some other people who were putting certain things in the comments, talking negatively about her business, and she was getting really defensive, rightfully so. I think I've stated this in another video where I stated that for people, businesses is like a form of their baby, or a vision that they were able to bring to life by the grace of God and through hard work and diligence. It's like you birthing something. And she was getting very defensive, and I instantly thought to myself as I was seeing this woman get emotional, I was like, oh honey, this is textbook. It just came into my spirit. I was like, this is textbook. This is a pattern. For most people, before their business is about to boom, before they before they step into that season of success, they experience immense friction. And during this time, it's common for them to experience maybe some rejection, maybe a smear campaign, maybe backbiting, people switching up on them and talking negatively about them. And I think it's important to understand this. People don't attack mediocrity. People don't attack or start to compete and start to compare and maybe even imitate in order to discourage you from, staying committed to your course and your path. People don't do all of those antics for individuals who they don't perceive as a threat. So it's important to understand that there is a cost when we talk about success. There's a cost for the crown. Now, I will say this, we serve a good God and a God who understands fellowship. Just because you have to forfeit one crowd, that doesn't mean that God doesn't have another community waiting for you on the other side. But typically, before you step into your new, you have to get rid of the old. So that may look like getting rid of old environments, getting rid of old groups. And a lot of the time, as you're elevating to that new level, the analogy that came to me is crabs in a bucket mentality. If you pay attention to a crab in a bucket amongst another group of crabs, that one crab who keeps fighting to get to the top, the other crabs keeps pulling it down to keep them at the same level. Rather than doing the work and getting themselves out the bucket for their own right, instead they want to tear down the person who stepped out on faith and took a chance to get out of that bucket. And the same thing happens when we talk about humans and their relationships with those in their immediate environment, or maybe in a professional environment. So this phenomenon of dealing with some kind of friction as you start to align yourself with your goals and with your dreams, it's no different from the crabs in the bucket mentality. Another phenomenon that I thought about, or rather a metaphor, was when we think about a plane before it takes off, right? A plane can experience so many different things before it's finally in the air and is heading to its next destination. One of the first things is turbulence. So we can connect that, in a, human context. We can connect that turbulence with maybe you experiencing some breakups, people talking about you, people leaving you high and dry, people starting a smear campaign, ruining your reputation. And rather than fighting that turbulence, it's actually in your best interest to allow it to happen. You have to let the plane sort itself out. Another thing that I thought about when we reference, a plane when it's getting ready to take off into the sky is the pressure. If you've ever been in an airplane and you've had symptoms of like your sinuses feeling clogged all of a sudden, or your ears clogging up, it's synonymous to pressure. What's happening is you're experiencing pressure in those certain areas of your body. So pressure can also look like people fighting against the work that you're doing. Another thing, since it's Sunday, that I'm thinking about is the stories in the Bible where before people got to the promised land, they had to put up a fight. There was some kind of resistance, whether it be David and Goliath, whether it be, Joshua and the Israelites coming up against those who were fighting against them before they entered the promised land. So before you get to the next level, you have to be prepared for opposition. Opposition comes with the territory. There's another story in the Bible that talks about Nehemiah and him experiencing opposition when it came to building the wall that God had called him to build. So for you in your life, the wall may not actually be like a wall, a physical wall. But for example, it can be a business. It can be a relationship. It can be you rebuilding your relationship with Christ. A lot of people experience friction, as they start to step more into their faith and following Christ more and becoming more obedient to whatever it is that God has called them to do. People in their environment will start to become, hostile. They'll start to make sly comments. And rather than fighting against that current, you need to allow God to weed these people out of your life because they're not coming with you to the next level. And it's important to understand that even though the cost of success, the cost of being the pioneer is oftentimes, you losing that quote unquote popularity. Now, another thing to note about popularity is it's completely subjective. There may be instances where following the crowd is actually a liability, right? You realize that there is a pattern of everyone cheering one another on to their own demise and their own downfall, right? You're an accomplice to your own downfall, or other people around you are accomplices to your downfall and your failures. Nevertheless, every time I think about this notion of popularity doesn't always mean progress, there was an animation, a video. All of these people were in this line and they were following the lead of the person right before them. And every person would keep walking off of this cliff. And obviously they would fall to their own demise. Now, there was a person towards the end of the line, and after a few people, he observed a pattern. And he was like, I don't think I'm finna walk off of this cliff like everyone else. It's not ending well, even though everyone else is blindly following tradition. So what he ended up doing when it was his turn to walk off the cliff is he built a bridge so that they could make it to the other side. And you know what happened? For the people who were behind him, they got mad at him, knocked down the bridge, and continued to walk off the cliff. And I'm going to say this for the pioneers. Sometimes when you are the pioneer and you're someone who is gifted with discernment, I'll never forget my aunt told me this years ago. And she was telling me this because I had called her because she's very spiritually in tune. I'm very blessed in that sense. I've always had a spiritual army around me, spiritually and physically. And a lot of my spiritual, warriors comes from my own bloodline. But nevertheless, my aunt, I had called her one time because she felt me. That's how we speak in our family. And plus, we have we have island roots, so there are certain words and things like that. It's just very spiritual, so we don't really have to go into too much, logic and things like that. We just understand. It's a knowing. But she was like, I felt you, and she was like, tell me what's going on. And I just started telling her everything that was happening in that season of my life, and I was like, Auntie, I'm confused because it's like I'm trying to communicate this, but it's like they're completely misinterpreting my intentions. And I'm like, it's hard because it's like I see the outcome as clear as day, but they don't see it. And she listened to me, and she just said so calmly after I got done, confiding in her, she said, honey, it's because they're not supposed to see. And I said, oh. And that's the cost of having discernment. There are situations, and this is where I started to realize that it was a blessing. And for you guys, this video did numbers as well, where I talked about the importance of trusting your discernment. The gift of discernment is you'll see something ahead of its time. Other people may call it common sense. Other people label it as pattern recognition. But that's a gift for you to see where something is headed before it happens, and for you to implement a necessary course of action, either to protect yourself, to pivot, or to keep moving forward. As pioneers, there are certain things that you may be called to build, and people are scoffing at you. People are laughing and mocking the idea, and little do they know that this idea is going to boom over the next 2 to 5 years because you're in alignment with an up-and-coming innovation or a new business trend. You're ahead of the timeline. So with that being said, it's important to understand this. The cost of success is also dealing with ridicule. People will ridicule you before they start to follow your lead. And that's why I made the point that I did earlier about it's important to not get so caught up on popularity, because sometimes you will strive from popularity from the wrong crowd. Now, the goal isn't to necessarily strive for popularity at all. But what I will say is this, because life is a balancing act. When you are in alignment with your purpose and you're operating in your God-given gifts, you're operating in your God-given assignment, a lot of the time your community will follow. But the prerequisite for you to find your new community, that newfound tribe that respects what you're doing, that has faith in what you're doing, or that can help you. There are some people who are destiny helpers, but they can only help you when you finally detach from what you are no longer called to do and who you're no longer called to be around, right? There's scripture that talks about you can't pour new wine into old wineskins. You have to get whole new wineskins so that those wineskins can carry the wine. Old wineskins can't even hold the wine. They don't even have the capacity to hold the new thing that God is doing for you and doing through you. So in order for you to actually find that community, you have to step out on faith. And that looks like you ridding yourself of whoever you were previously involved with, whoever you were previously aligned with and around. Now, the flip side to this is 9 times out of 10, this isn't going to be a clean cutoff. There are going to be some people who feel rejected, some people who feel entitled. Well, I was here with you for X amount of years. I was here with you for this season. But when God is calling you into something new, that person may not come along. You don't have control over that. You don't have control over the weeding process that God is doing in your life. There are also individuals who feel like it should be them and not you. This is another cost to being the pioneer and operating in your discernment. Sometimes you don't need 10 years of working at something to pick up on the fact like, oh, you just got to move this around and then do this and then implement this and then we'll be on the up and up. That's the only change that we need to do. Some people are mad at the fact that they feel like I'm someone who should be calling shots because I've been at this for X amount of time. But sometimes common sense, I think a lot of people refer to it as like the gift of pattern recognition. In the faith community, we understand it as like the gift of discernment and also the gift of prophecy. Like if you're really in the church, you guys understand the gift of prophecy. But it's your ability to kind of step back and see something and instantly implement a course of action. In that moment, you'll get an unction and be like, oh, okay, we just need to move this around. We just need to tweak this. We need to add this person. We might need to put this person in a different department, etc. And there will be certain people around you who will take your knack for just knowing at the blink of an eye. They will take that as a personal offense because they're internalizing it as you're showing my inadequacies. So the cost of being a pioneer operating in your discernment, it's also going to look like people being frustrated with you and being offended at this gift. So it can breed some feelings of maybe animosity, hostility, even some competitiveness in those who are not healthy and those who do not perceive it as a gift and as an asset to their team and to that environment. So this is another reason why you have to detach from this idea of gaining popularity from everyone that you're around, because there are going to be some people who will treat you as if you're an enemy, but you've actually been sent to be a blessing and an additive to their environment. But nevertheless, to break this, concept down further, I'm going to read from the excerpt titled "Heavy is the Head That Wears the Crown" in the book Green Eyes. Understand that being different and standing out comes with immense criticism and pressure. Sometimes we find ourselves fixating on people not liking us instead of perceiving it as preparation for leadership. Leaders are set apart. Leaders are authority figures. With that being said, there are going to be people who are intimidated by it because they never understood leadership. There are going to be people who are envious of this characteristic because they feel it should be their turn, not yours. Some people will make you out to be their enemy for the sake of taking your place. This is the name of the leadership game. The sooner you realize that opposition comes with the territory, the better. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this video today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as your personal experiences with the situation, such as what was discussed in this video today. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care. Oh, and also, I want to let you guys know that I have launched a membership feature on my channel. So this is going to be dedicated to a lot of spiritual concepts because I want to get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of phenomenons. And we're also going to be talking about some other things that are specific to emotional, mental, and even some physical triggers. We're going to be ripping the Band-Aid off with the content under this particular membership on this channel. So feel free to check that out. I'm going to be posting another video really soon. I've already posted a video talking a little bit about spiritual codes and decoding things such as energy transference. So feel free to check that out. And yet again, I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.